And through those different D's, if you don't understand these three concepts inside of a partnership: transparency, trust, and toughness. If you don't have those three things, no partnership is ever going to work. And what I mean by that is transparency, right? So think of your wife, your business partner. Like when you meet, right? You align in certain things, whether it's humor, whether it's ethics, whether it's morals, whether it's economics, whatever it is. Those things are what align you. But those things are also what creates trust. So I've got to be able to trust somebody that, I always say this is a big thing for me. When I was raising my kids when they were young, I never worried about when I was there.
Have you ever wondered how successful architecture, engineering, and construction companies scale their business?
Or have you ever wanted guidance on how to get more growth, wealth, and freedom from your AEC company?
Well, then you're in luck. Hi, I'm Will Forat.
And I'm Justin Nagel, and we're your podcast hosts.
We interview successful AEC business leaders to learn how they use people, process, and technology to scale their businesses.
So sit back and get ready to learn from the industry's best. This is
Building Scale.
Hey listeners, it's Will here. Our mission is to help the AEC industry protect itself by making technology easy. If you've ever listened to our show, then you know that the three pillars of scaling a business are people, process, and technology. So if you suspect technology is your weak link, then book a call with us to see where we can help maximize your company's IT and cybersecurity strategy. Just go to buildingscale.net/help.
Today on Building Scale, we're joined by Rick Heagarty. Rick is a serial entrepreneur, business owner, and operator who's built multiple companies from the ground up alongside his business partner. He's a co-founder and owner of Land IQ, Southern Closets, 615 Design Group, with businesses spanning land surveying, development consulting, engineering, and custom interiors. Rick has built a reputation for precision, quality, and doing business the right way with the right people, which will be a big emphasis today. He's also an author, former college football standout, graduate the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. Through Land IQ, Rick's team develops high accuracy surveying and mapping solutions using advanced technologies like the Wingtray, a drone platform. Southern Closets creates custom storage built-in solutions with focus on craftsmanship, efficiency, and thoughtful design. And through 615 Design Group, his team helps bring development projects to life through engineering, planning, permitting, and construction support. But beyond business, Rick has been married for more than 30 years, has 5 wonderful children, and brings that same passion and commitment to his family as he does entrepreneurship. And with all that said, Rick, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, you're a bundle of joy and wisdom. That's what we found in the planning calls, the interactions that we've had. I said all this amazing stuff that you've done. There's even way more to it. I tried to chop it down as much as I could, but give us the background. How'd you get into the industry and tell us about your business?
Well, I think that, my generation, when they got done with college, was more focused on, that first job, not necessarily what we wanted to do, but what we had to do. My parents, I was raised by the baby boomers. So at 18, you got pushed out of the nest. There was no coming back. As a matter of fact, I had to ring my doorbell to get back into my house when I graduated from college, right?
They changed the locks on you.
They did, right? They did. That's what they did, right? Which was fine. That's just how it was, right? So you were really focused on making money because you had to support yourself. And when I got done with school, I really didn't, with a psychology degree, and the reason I chose psychology is I had a great high school psychology teacher. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. So started young with a family. So I just know I needed to make money. So I got into the construction building material business early because it was my entry into business. Didn't realize that I would love it. Didn't realize that I would fit. As an old kind of a blue collar college football player, I was a fullback. So I was, in the grunt position, basically too small to be an offensive lineman, too slow to be an actual running back, too short to be an actual tight end or a receiver. So I was this little fire plug, kind of a blue collar. And I just knew that I could get my hands dirty. I could put a collared shirt on if I had to. I could mix it up with just a lot of different types of people if I had to. And the construction building material side of the business was like perfect for me because it was an office setting, but then you got out into the field and you were, with guys swinging hammers, and then you got to actually, do takeoffs and understand how the project went together. I learned about it from a great company that really taught me, really how to construct a residential, single family home. So I understood all the parts and pieces that went together and just started a career in the building material side of the business without even saying, hey, I want to be in building materials. It ended up being great. I ended up doing really well, moving up the ladder very quickly into management positions. Never really was in a sales position, was always in kind of a supportive type of role. Didn't realize that I was a sales guy or a marketing guy till, probably I got into my late 20s, early 30s. And realized I could just develop good relationships with people, and they trusted me and started buying, from me. Through that experience, I was working for a large building material manufacturer, and they sent me for my MBA, not realizing they were training an entrepreneur. Through the Great Recession, I came up with a great idea, and out of the Great Recession, I started a building material supply company that became wildly successful on purpose, right? I wasn't just kind of swinging. I had a very detailed plan that I'd wrote out, that through and what I'd learned through the Great Recession was, general contractors were really learned they could do more with less during the Great Recession. So what I did, for example, is like prior to the Great Recession, a large publicly traded production building company like D.R. Horton would have a local team of purchasing agents. When they went through the Great Recession, they downsized, and it was one purchasing person. When they came out of the Great Recession, they realized that they could do so much more with less, that the company that I started, I wanted to be like an extension of these companies. So we were great at purchasing. We were great at value engineering. We were great at showing general contractors different types of products that they could use, where they could save money. And we kind of became an extension of these companies, which created these wonderful relationships, which, people always ask me from a vertical integration standpoint, why we added all these products that are in the same category, but not in the same space. They weren't adjacent. Right. So it was really awesome how it happened.
So you said something vertical, vertical integration or vertically integrated. Can you please explain what that means?
Yeah. So inside the business, right, we started as a supply company. Okay. We were just supplying materials to general contractors. Well, after, the relationships were so tight that I'd have with these owners that I would come in and I would ask them, okay, talk to me about pain points. And a general contractor would say, now the products you sell us are great, but we can't find anyone to install them properly. So then I would come back to my office and I'd say, okay, do I know anybody that knows how to install these products properly? Okay, I do. So I'd go out and I'd hire that person. Then if I'm selling siding to that general contractor, now I'm marrying him with an installer, and now I'm picking the revenue up now from the installation side, not only from the material side. So what I've done is I've vertically integrated into a turnkey process, and I picked up the revenue, right? So we kept building up through that silo inside of from our foundation of just the type of business we were. And we knew that we when you think about building a house, and we're also in the multifamily space and in the commercial space. When you think about building a house, you think about, okay, foundation materials, okay, framing materials. You think about flooring materials. You think about kitchens, interior trim, roofing, gutters, siding, columns, all these different things. And I would just go through and pick apart the house, and I would follow the general contractors, these owners around, and I'd find out what they were really frustrated by. So we grew the company from an exteriors company to an interiors company, from exterior siding and exterior ornamentals to interior trim, interior cabinetry. And when you do cabinets, you do countertops, right?
Yep.
And then every year I would sit down and it would get more advanced. The general contractors would say, we cannot get our surveyor to call us back because we can't build a house without a survey. Because we've got to locate the control points on the piece of property. We need to know the topography. We need to know So I got to thinking, okay, I know a guy that's in the survey business. How can I hire him? So I hired him. And the thing is you give up a little bit each time, right? You give up a little bit of equity to really draw a guy in. So if I found a guy that was a surveyor, because in Tennessee, you have to be a licensed surveyor and it's not easy to be licensed, right? So I'd find a licensed surveyor. I'd generate a relationship with him. I would give him a little piece of the pie and really make him feel like a partner. And then I would take my vertical integration tactics, my business savvy, and my finances, and I would scale the company. And then a general contractor would say, boy, now we've got the survey. Now I can't find a civil engineer that can tell me where I can put that house on that piece of property. So then I went out and I did the same thing with a survey company and a civil engineer. And I'm not a civil engineer. But what I've done is I've connected all the dots. So I've taken the pieces that I've learned of, business ownership and leadership, which I'm a huge people developer and believe so strongly on leadership, that I think that if you can get and it all comes back to this. The first book somebody threw at me was Good to Great, right? So you read that book and you get a really good sense of, okay, I just need to put the right people on the bus. Then once that bus is traveling down the road, I need to make sure where everybody goes. And that's what I was really good at. I was really good at finding where the places that people go, because I didn't want 2 shortstops or 2 center fielders, right? I didn't want the guy that always wanted to bat fourth. I needed a cleanup guy. I needed a leadoff guy. I needed a guy that hit, last in the order. I needed a guy to play center field, so I was really good at finding all those people to be able to put in the right positions and then develop them, right? Raw talent is useless unless you develop it. So I've spent basically a career developing people is what I've done.
Oh, I mean, let's dig into that a little bit, because partnerships were formed, and this is a little bit of where your expertise is. When we first started talking to you, it was like, holy cow, you're doing a lot with partnerships.
Yep. So that's a great lead to this. I've studied this a bunch, right? And so the first thing I did was, from a leadership standpoint, was to determine not necessarily how to lead people, but to understand why people follow. And once you understand why people follow, then you can understand the leadership tactics and techniques that you need to manage and lead that person. So I started there. Then I went to the next step and I said, okay, every relationship ends, right? And it ends one of these 4 ways: a death, a disability, and it's really the 4 Ds. A death, I had to make this up. This is, you can find this anywhere. A death, a disability, just wanting to be done, right? Or divorce, right? And I know that every relationship ends that way. So just take, for instance, the relationship with your wife, right? My relationship with my wife is going to end a death, right? It's the only way it's going to end. Okay. Been married for 31 years. Fantastic woman. Met her young. We've built a wonderful thing together, and that's a partnership in itself. Okay. My partnership in business can end other ways. And I've had them end in divorce, right? I've had them end in done. People just wanted to be done. And through those different Ds, if you don't understand these 3 concepts inside of a partnership: transparency, trust, and toughness. If you don't have those 3 things, no partnership is ever going to work. And what I mean by that is transparency, right? So think of your wife, your business partner. Like when you meet, right? You align in certain things, whether it's humor, whether it's ethics, whether it's morals, whether it's economics, whatever it is. Those things are what align you. But those things are also what creates trust. So I've got to be able to trust somebody that, I always say this is a big thing for me. When I was raising my kids when they were young, I never worried about when I was there. Never. I always worried about when I wasn't there. Like, what were they doing? Were they little assholes? What were they doing? Right? So once you understand those 3 T's, right, and you create that transparency and you create that trust, that third one is the most important, because the toughness. I've got to be able to have tough conversations. Like, Will, if you and I are partners and I say, okay, Will, man, I just landed the biggest deal we're ever going to get. Margins are through the roof. We're going to cash checks, wheelbarrows of cash to the bank. Easy conversation, right?
Right. It's all positive. It's all
as opposed to
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Hey, Will, I just got a call from our biggest customer and they're going to go with someone else and we're going to lose revenue and we're going to lose margin and we're going to lose distributions. That's a tough conversation, right? Because as a partner, I don't want you to worry. I want you to know that my job is to generate revenue. You might be the CFO or you might be the marketing officer. Your role is different from mine. And we don't ever want to let each other down, right? So we need to make sure that through trust and through transparency, trust, and toughness, that we are aligned all the way through. That's how partnerships last. That is how they last 100%. And I've been in partnerships that there's been no trust and they haven't worked. There's been no transparency, and you figure out, like a great example, and I won't say any names, but I had a partner years ago who was on his third wife, and his second one was a stripper, right? That should have been a red flag right there, right? And then I didn't realize he had a gambling problem till later down the road. I mean, there were red flags I didn't see because I didn't have those conversations up front. So I learned this transparency, toughness, trust, and toughness through experiences. I didn't just come up with it on my own. I had to have 15 years of being an entrepreneur to come up with it, to understand it. But going into today, I'm creating new businesses still today. And the latest one we did was Land IQ. And when we brought the surveyor in, I mean, we sat down and got naked in front of each other. I mean, basically.
Yeah. Clarification, figuratively or actually there, Rick?
Figuratively, we got naked in front of each other, and you just lay it all out on the table. And you say, this is the time to tell me where the bodies are buried. I'm going to tell you where mine are buried. You tell me where yours are buried, right? And if we both are in alignment with where the bodies are buried and how each other reacts, I'm willing to do this for you as the managing partner in an equity stake. You agree? Okay, now we trust each other. Okay, now let's have some tough conversations, right? How are we going to generate revenue? How are we going to spend the money? When are we actually going to give distributions to each other? When is the loan when is the loan going to be paid back from the seed money that was put up by me, right? Well, once you can figure that out and you figure it out up front, there's no surprises. Because one day with your business partner, you're going to wake up and you're going to go, you know what? Man, I just want to coach football, or I just want to volunteer at the church, or I just want to travel all over the world with my wife, and I just am kind of done. So if you've got a proper operating agreement where that is all clearly stated up front in 4 different paragraphs, what happens if I die? What happens if I become disabled? What happens if there's a divorce? What happens if I just want to be done? And you establish all that up front, it's butter. I mean, it's butter. So, if anybody I can give any advice that wants to be an entrepreneur, and I've given a bunch, that is number one, is trust your partner. And I'm a big partnership guy. I don't own a single business that I'm not a partner in. So I believe in them. I believe in them 100%. But if it's not all talked about up front, and like you put some people in a headlock and you squeeze, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen the way you want it to. And it's not going to end the way you want it to either.
Can I ask, you kind of talked about like getting naked, right? And like really, to what depth, like what kind of questions are being asked? What is being shared, right? To help just understand like where this is going, or what themes are you kind of talking about?
Yeah, I'm talking, let's start the easy stuff. Talk to me about your credit history. What's your credit score like? We're both going to have to personally guarantee some stuff. We're both going to have to get lines of credit for the company. Are you credit worthy? Have you ever filed bankruptcy? How many children do you have? Where do they go to school? How many wives have you had? Was one of them a stripper?
Is that a new question? We just throw that in there. Sometimes past experience build new questions. Like if you look at an insurance application,
it's not a question,
that's exactly what happens.
It's always what's funny though is all of the partners that I have, other than that one that didn't work out, have wonderful relationships with their spouses. Because the other thing too, right? If you're not aligned with your spouse, it's a problem. I mean, it's a huge problem, because the late nights and the long weekends and the business trips, if there's no alignment there on whose role is what, like my wife and I had a great So my wife was a professional for a long time, and she worked for a large Fortune 10 company and was a financial analyst and was very, very smart, right? She got to a point where she was like, you know what? I'm ready to be a mom full time. So Rick, all this finance is on you. I'll handle Heagarty Inc. I'll run us in the black. You just provide this amount of money and we're good. I'm going to make sure the kids are fed. I'm going to make sure they get to school on time. They get picked up. They're to ball practices. They're to all the things. They're well clothed. They're clean. You just bring in the money and make sure I can do all of those things. Right. So that business relationship, with my wife started early. We knew the right hand knew what the left hand was doing. And if you get to a point and you don't have that relationship with your spouse, that thing's going to rear its head at some point and it's not going to be good. It will not be good. Because here's the thing. I never want a partner of mine to have to choose between me and his spouse, because they should choose their spouse 10 out of 10 times. Right? So those are great questions to know too. What kind of time what do you do? What are your hobbies? Right? Those are big things. I mean, there's a ton of questions that you can ask, through the process, right? Athletes. I love athletes because I know athletes are disciplined. They're tough. Well, certain athletes, right? And they're tough. Wrestlers are like some of the best partners. Hockey guys, those guys they're grinders, right? They know discipline. They know, especially wrestlers. Like if a wrestler gets pinned and thrown to his back, he doesn't jump up and say, oh, the safety missed a block. Right? Or missed a tackle. I was wide open. The quarterback didn't see me. He comes off the mat and he goes, I just got my ass kicked and it's my fault. Right? So the questions you ask through it are really, really important. Really, really important. Right? And I remember my partner. So I've got one constant partner that's been a partner of mine in all of our businesses. He was my original partner. He'll be the partner that I die with. When we first met, we were both college athletes. We both had very, very similar sense of humor. Very similar sense of humor. We both wanted to go for it. Like we were both saying the same stuff. I want to go for it. What's it going to be? We would talk about some crazy stuff, like just like wild, business ideas, right? So it was more like a culture piece too, where you were like, it's not necessarily defined, but it's how I feel when I'm with somebody, right? You feel like good. Like he and I can get in a car and drive 4 hours together and not say 2 words to each other. Right. And jump out of the car and be like, we're like brothers. Right. Or we can get in a car for 4 hours and we can talk the whole way and solve world hunger. Right. So there's things that just work with him and I that are just, he's just like incredible. He's incredible. And when I think about like my 2 most important partnerships, I think obviously my wife and my business partner, Jay. Without those 2, I'm not sitting here right now talking to you guys. I'm not. They get a ton of credit. They get a ton of credit.
So, how many partnerships have you created, just to help the audience kind of understand?
Yeah. So, so the businesses that we sold, we have 7 businesses. We sold 3. We sold 3 to a large, similar type of company out of Rochester, New York. All 3 of those businesses, my original partner, we were all 3 partners together. So we were 50-50 all the way across. There was no more partnerships. Through the 15 years, though, the company that bought us was not interested in 615 Design Group because it just didn't make any sense for them. They're in the building material space. They didn't want a civil engineering firm, right? So we maintained the civil engineering firm, which there are three total partners. We're all equal partners. Land IQ, there are 4 partners because there are 3. And how Land IQ talk about vertical integration. 615 Design Group, we were spending, a couple $100,000+ a year farming out surveys to a subcontractor. And in a meeting one day, when I was looking at the P&L and I was looking at subcontractor costs, I said, have we ever thought about our own, survey company? And our managing partner in our civil engineering firm said, it's very expensive. And I said, okay, what are the costs? And he said, well, for a total station or the proper drone, we're looking at a couple $100,000. And I said, okay, what does a licensed surveyor cost? Well, they're a 6-figure guy. They're going to want bonuses. It's expensive to get into. And I said, let's do it. because I think we can do it. We can do it right. We can scale it right. And I think we can get our money back really quick. So that's what we did. But to bring that civil engineer or that surveyor in, we had to give him equity because that's the only way we're going to get him.
And get him to stay.
Yeah.
Because it needs to stay because you need to have that on part of the company as you're doing this.
Then, our closet company, which is interesting because it's just my original partner and I, we own that 50-50. Now that business is growing, and that one might be bigger than any of the businesses we've ever done because we're finding with the equipment we have opened so many doors other than just making closets. I mean, kitchens, flat pack, all kinds of cutting and different types of interior finishes with the equipment that we have in the warehouse that we've got, and the capabilities there have been incredible. So revenue is not just making a closet for a builder or Mr. and Mrs. Jones. Revenue now is about 50-50 split, cutting material for other companies. And then we just contracted with a local plywood company to make specialty plywood fixtures, so to speak. So it's been kind of interesting. And then the last company is our development company. So there are 3 partners in our development company: myself, my original partner, and then the gentleman that is our partner in 615 Design Group. And we're currently we are developing, building, and selling 40,000 square feet of office space, which we are in the middle of. We just started the vertical construction. So it's going extremely well. It's been a whirlwind, right? Because I don't, at 55, like, I think my dad's generation retired, right? So the baby boomers, they picked a time on the calendar, they put their finger on it, and they said, I'm going to retire on this date. I'm going to get my gold watch, and then I'm going to figure out Hulu and Netflix, right? I don't think my generation retires. I think my generation gets comfortable with their finances and then starts doing more things that they want to do: travel, football coaching, real estate deal, investing in a son or a daughter's business venture, consulting, but always has some sort of revenue that they're generating. I think my generation does.
One question I have is, obviously we talked to a lot of leaders. You have decided to diversify, right? Like into these different businesses compared to just doing the one thing and just doing that and growing that one space. Why choose to have the multiple businesses compared to like just put the 100% focus on building supply initially, maybe closets now, whatever it is, whichever business? Why not take that path instead?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So, I worked through the Great Recession, and every time the phone rang, and I worked for a $1 billion company, every time the phone rang, I thought that was the phone call, right? That was the one where I was going to head to the house and just start looking for another job and, try to figure it out. So when I became an entrepreneur, I started looking at different ways to create profit centers to hedge my bet, right? So we first started shipping siding, and, we bought 28-foot trucks, triaxles with Moffetts fitted on the back, and we could get so many units of siding on one truck. And I was looking at weight, and I was looking at average ticket, and I was looking at logistics, right? That was the easy part was actually selling it. The hard part was actually figuring out to get it there efficiently and effectively. So I started looking at these trucks, and we could load thousands and thousands of pounds based on our rating. And we were always under that. And I was like, boy, I feel like we can strap more to that truck, right? So I just got to think, okay, why not the columns? Why not the shutters? Why not the trellises? Why not the corbels? Why not the porch ceiling? Why not all the exterior ornamentals? So we started looking at the truck as this profit center of how much can I get on it and how much can I strap to it to be able to make its most. I mean, the truck's already going that direction, right? Let's get as much on it as we can. So, but then we also were faced with, our warehouse was only so big, the ceilings were only so tall, we only had so much racking, and we only had so much money, right? So we started also looking at other categories we could build that that weren't inventory heavy, right? That didn't take up a whole bunch of space. Because I don't know if you guys have ever been in a kitchen warehouse or a siding warehouse. It takes up a lot of space. And it's really, really difficult to stack kitchens and now you could, cantilever and stack siding on racking, but boy, kitchens are very, very tough to manage. You need a lot of lay down space. It eats up a lot of space. So that's why you need a lot of margin on kitchens, right? So when we started looking at, it was really easy to stack and store columns and shutters and corbels. It was really easy to, civil engineering it's intellectual property. It's just whatever's in a civil engineer's head. It was easy. There was no inventory. There was no warehouse. It was just a really expensive guy sitting behind a really expensive computer, right?
Yep.
With a rubber stamp in his hand, right? So we looked at it from that standpoint. What other categories, like if a builder through the years asked me to do drywall, I said, no way. I'm not doing anything that's attached to a commodity. I'm not doing roofing. I'm not doing drywall, and I'm not doing lumber. I don't have the space. I don't have the time. I don't have the people, and it's a very, very large investment financially.
Okay.
So you didn't want to be part of commodities. You created efficiencies with essentially looking at the truck. So for like logistical reasons, you wanted to fill up the truck, right? Which totally makes sense.
Average ticket was a big thing. When we started in our first year, we started calculating this. Our average ticket was $7,500. When we sold the business, our average ticket was almost 25,000.
Did you create minimums? Wow, that's a lot.
That's a huge,
Yes.
massive increase.
Yes. And it had to do with a couple of things, right? So that was interesting, right? So you guys are familiar with James Hardy, right? Okay. So James Hardy forever, all they sold a product was primed. It was a prime product. Then they came out with this pre-painted, pre-finished product called Color Plus.
Uh-huh.
It was almost 35% more. The weight was the same. The transportation was the same. Everything was the same. So I went out and convinced all of our builders to buy pre-finished siding. So the revenue, same thing with columns. We were selling unfinished columns. So then I found a company that was pre-finishing PVC columns in gray and white and any color. I don't know if you guys have seen this big craze with black and these dark colors on houses today.
Seen them.
And then the modern farmhouse became a huge thing. So modern farmhouse, there's, 6 to 8 columns in every modern farmhouse. A PVC, structural column is going to be, 6 to 8 columns is going to be $2,500. All I have to do is stack those on top of the siding. I mean, we just drove the average ticket too on premium products. And then could go in and convince a builder. And then we also had great partnerships with our manufacturers, with James Hardy. We would say and we'd go out and do a bunch of research. Prime siding plus field applied paint is X amount per square foot. Hardy, can you get to that spot price wise per square foot to where I can effectively go to a builder and say, hey, this is a product. We can install it as well, pick up revenue, and it's finished when it goes up. Well, their big thing was it'll get nicked up. Other trades will damage it. We'll guarantee it. We'll make sure it doesn't. We've got great touch up. We understand, our guys are very detailed when they install. Same thing with kitchens, right? We would then, based on the builder and the price band, because now kitchens are delivered in a box truck, right? We would change, like we were production minded because we were driving revenue. So we were very production minded with our customers. So then we started picking different buckets, right? Let's go to a first move up builder. Let's change the price band. Well, they're going to go from a white partial overlay shaker cabinet to a stained full overlay soft close. Same truck, same box, 25% more, right? So driving revenue that way too was big. So through the years, we didn't ship more material. We just increased the ticket by offering more expensive products, but not increasing the cost of the home to the builder. Because the other thing we went to the builder was, hey, we can help you sell these houses faster because, hey, your competitor across the street is using shitty white partial overlay cabinets with Formica countertops, right? And we can show you how to sell a house faster as Mr. and Mrs. Jones are coming out of their model home and walking into yours. So we did a lot. I mean, that was the whole idea when we came out of the recession is let us be a design department. Let us be your purchasing department. Let us show you how to value engineer, not just necessarily of saving money, but selling a house faster because of cycle times. So think about siding going up that's finished in the wintertime.
Versus vinyl.
Right.
Just versus if you have to paint it or you have to do anything to it.
Yeah,
I mean,
or hardy siding going up in the wintertime that's pre-painted. I don't have to wait weeks to get it painted when the weather cooperates. It's done, right? So then you start talking about builder interest, right? Can I save you on builder interest? Can I help you? Like I had one specific customer, he wanted to build a house in 120 days. He wanted to build it in 4 months, okay? Production style. I said, what if we get it to 99 days? Well, we could do 99 days. Let me handle the siding. Let me handle the kitchen. Let me handle all these parts and pieces, the closet. Let me handle all these parts and pieces. You don't have to call me. I'm already, when I go there for the siding, I'm already going to know from a scheduling and sequencing standpoint when that kitchen's got to go in. And when the kitchen goes in, I know when the closet has to go in. So, I mean, it was just it was like peanut butter and jelly. It worked really well, but we had to identify it, right?
That's knowing the business of others and like what makes sense for them and then applying your business to it, right? So how can I have you sell this house before the one across the street? I give you nicer stuff. That's a benefit to me, but it's also a benefit to you. Let me show you how to do this. You want to do it in 100 days? Great. Utilizing us is going to make that legitimate. That's going to make that a possibility, which is just aligning everyone's interests, essentially sitting on the same side of the table of each other and saying like, we want the same thing. So let's do it together.
We were driving value proposition before it was a buzzword and cool to say, right?
Oh yeah.
That's what we were doing. We didn't know before value proposition became this big buzzword. That's what we were doing. And we were doing it just because we were trying to. Now, the other thing I found out through the years too, the more categories I sold to a builder, it was much harder for them to leave me, right? Because I was replacing so many. And then depending on how long we did business with people and our finances, we would create terms for builders as well, right? So there was a lot of advantages. And I'll tell you this, if we lost a customer, we wanted to lose a customer.
Yeah, that makes sense. So obviously you've sold 3 of these businesses. What
Yes.
does that side of the coin look like? Obviously, it's very obvious that you are understanding how do you revenue generate, how do you up the ticket price, how do you do all those things. You gave a ton of great examples there. All right, now you've done all that stuff. You've built this beautiful business, and now you want to exit it. What does that look like?
That was difficult. And the reason it was difficult is because I've got 2 children that are still in the business. One of them actually runs the business today for the company that bought us, right? So that was difficult. I was worried about what he was going to think, my oldest son. His name's Ricky as well. We share the same name. And I raised the kid in the building material business in Middle Tennessee to understand how important your reputation is, right? So, I worked my butt off to have a stellar reputation, and I instilled that same thing in him. So he came into the business with the same name, knowing how important a reputation is. And he has done a fantastic job expanding and running the business after we exited. Now, what I will tell you, it was a tough decision for us to make. The problem with being an entrepreneur is I have to liquefy my net worth at some point to be able to ride off into the sunset. I can't go to my travel agent or the grocery store and say, I've got a lot of value in this business. Trust me, this will be okay. You guys take credit. So at some point you've got to do that, right? What's funny is my dad raised me to be, this is funny, I'm going to say, my dad raised me to be Dan Marino and not Brett Favre. Dan Marino is known as the greatest quarterback never to win a Super Bowl, but he got out at the right time. Brett Favre is known for sending pictures of his member to people, right? So my dad always told me, you want to go out like Dan Marino, not like Brett Favre. So when we started aging and started thinking about other things that we wanted to do and other aspirations we had an investment bank that we worked with out of Chicago called Madison Street Capital, which was absolutely fantastic. And they put quite a few very interested people in front of us. We realized early that we did not want to go with a private equity company. We wanted a strategic buyer to buy us because of our care in the business. We still own the real estate that they occupied for a while. They're not in it anymore. And I have children in it too, right? So my oldest son is the VP of sales. He runs Tennessee and Florida. And then my youngest son is their operations manager. So I'm still very plugged in because of those two guys. But I will tell you this, it was very difficult for me, and I'll tell you why. You have a ton of value when you're the owner. The day you sell, your value falls. People don't call you back as fast. People aren't as interested in your emails anymore because they have new bosses and new ownership and new operating systems and all kinds of new stuff. That was really hard for me because I'm a people guy and I'm a people developer and I'm a big leadership guy. So now people aren't responding to me the way that I once had them respond to me. And my wife used to tease, well, I wouldn't either because you're not signing my check anymore, right? She's like, oh, Rick, everybody laughs at your jokes because you're the owner, right? Which has, there's some merit to that too, but it was tough for me. It was really tough for me. It took me a few months to transition out of that because, I ran a leadership development class. I'm the guy that loves to walk around and talk to people, jump in the truck and ride with a guy, one of our drivers to see, really, because people forget our drivers see our customers way more than anyone else does. So it was always really important for me to make sure that drivers were well taken care of and we spent the time with them to understand that, they're as important as the salespeople, as the project managers, as the estimators, as the owners, as the managers. And I think culturally when we built the business, that was really important because everyone felt like they had a voice. Like I can't tell you how many meetings I've had where I've sat down with a warehouse person, a forklift driver, or a truck driver talking to me about efficiencies. And then, they don't even realize they're talking to me about efficiencies. But then you teach them about efficiencies and then effectiveness. And then they really start to feel their value, right? And that's, I think, really, really important when you're building a business culturally.
It's interesting when an owner exits because and again, you have multiple businesses, but a lot of times there's a component of purpose, right, that's connected to that business. And to exit it, what does that mean? To you, the leadership component, right? You're building others, right? You're building those up, and to not just let the business go, but to let that role go can feel lots of different emotions. I'm sure you experienced.
I've done some consulting, which has been fun.
Mm-hmm.
Some leadership and executive coaching. I've been asked to be a fractional CEO, which I have not done. Maybe that's something down the line that I could do. I do fit really well in the construction space just because of my knowledge and just because of my personality. And I think that once you realize that chapter has closed and you're willing to move on from it, which was, like I said, hard for me to do, it opens it up because I thought too that money would motivate me. And, I'd never seen that many zeros, on a bank account, and it doesn't. I still am stressed about the same stuff. I still worry about the same stuff. And so that part of it didn't change for me, right? Wanting to build and grow successful businesses is like my drug. Like I want to do that, right? So you take this money that you get and you don't stare at it, you reinvest it, right? You invest in new businesses, you buy real estate, you diversify your portfolio in a way that you can play with it as well. Like what's so funny is, and this, I said to somebody the other day. So I spent all these years as an entrepreneur, not investing in the stock market, right? Because I can control the outcome in my business. I sell the business and what do? I invest all the damn money in the stock market, right? Which I can't control. I can't control us dropping bombs on people and all this bullshit we're doing right now, and watch this stock market fluctuate that it's doing, right? So it's become just really kind of odd where I was so resistant to it because I wanted to invest all the money back into our businesses because I knew I can control it. And now here I am, now that I take all this money and I invest it into the stock market and I watch it just do this, right? And I'm like, shit, what have I done, right?
It's a weird dichotomy, isn't it?
It's ridiculous, actually.
So something that I want to touch upon, because I think it's really important, and you talked about it sort of your generation, but I'm going to be more specific here. How much does mindset matter?
Buddy, mindset is, so when you think about your personal mindset, right, it is super important because you don't realize how much it affects others, right? Like if I get into a situation where I am trying to explain to an employee that I've got them, right? I'm there for you. I've got you. right? I'm trying to give them some grace, as opposed to that kind of truth part of it where I'm telling them, you got this, you've got to figure it out, right? And you start that whole mindset of, now I'm teaching people when it's time to lean on the team versus when it's time to go out on their own and make a decision. That's what I learned very, very early on in my career, is if you keep asking me questions and I keep answering and I keep doing your job, I don't need you. And I don't think that there's anything you can do as an employee that I can undo. So what I'm going to teach you how to do is I'm going to teach you how to have the right mindset situationally on when it's time to put your hand up and say, I need help, versus when it's time just to kick the hole in the door and go through it yourself. And that's that whole kind of that grace versus truth kind of prism, right? I got you versus you got this. And I think once you learn what that scale is and know how to get people on it, I think that's when you really figure out how to help people with their mindset. I went through a mindset course a few years ago, did a ton of writing, did like a whole book worth of writing just on myself. And that's been like, it's been really hard for me to do because I feel like I'm a pretty modest guy, and I know I've done a lot of stuff. When Justin, you read all these things that I do and it sounds pretty fancy, but at the end of the day, we're all the same, right? I'm just a little older. I've done a few more things. You guys will have similar resumes when you're 55, I'm sure. And once you realize that, right, and you put yourself in the position of the person you're directing, through like a situational leadership system, I think you can teach somebody some really great mindset skills where they can navigate and manage to be able to handle these situations that they put themselves in, right? Whether it's sales, whether it's marketing, whether it's, I used to tell people all the time, when a customer calls you and is yelling at you, I used to tell, there's no such thing as a kitchen emergency. There's no such thing as a siding emergency. There's not a survey or a civil engineering emergency. Probably what happened was something earlier in the day that really pissed that person off, and they're just flexing it on you.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
Right? So now you've got to figure out how to accept that, absorb it, and then flex back and let them know, hey, I'm here to help. I'm here to do whatever I need to do, whether it's an employee, a customer, whatever. Because boy, I could write I could write a book based on what employees have told me and the things that I've heard through the years from customers and employees that would blow your guys' minds. Stuff that I shouldn't know, right? Just because you can dig in when someone feels engaged, they feel comfortable, and they just start telling you everything, right? And that's when you kind of start picking out the things that you want, and then you can use them to your advantage to be able to make the relationship better. And I think that's what's really important, right? You become kind of like a professional psychologist, right? A professional therapist is what you kind of business therapist, right? And it's been that whole part of it. Like when I think about mindset, I think about the leadership and I think about the leadership development. If there was one job if that I could pick and say, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life, it would be that thing for sure.
Do you have an example of sort of something you heard and then how did you apply it later on?
Something I heard and then how did I apply it later on? Yeah, I didn't understand this comment when I was a kid. Well, to me, when I was in high school and college, high school was about one thing. It was sports. I did not give two shits about school. I was pretty good at it, so I just kind of skated by with that B average, right? My football coach, I got to college, it was about two things. It was about my girlfriend, who's my wife now, and football. My football coach used to tell me, let your shoulder pads do the talking. Right? And I was like, what kind of stupid comment is that? I'm going to go out on my jaw and I'm going to talk shit. I'm going to do what every other football player does. And it didn't make sense to me till later in life that he was telling me to let my actions be me, right? Don't let your mouth get your, write checks your body can't cash. Let your shoulder pads do the talking and do by showing. Show people like, and then this is where I'm getting with this. I would never ask anyone in any of my businesses to do anything that I haven't done myself. I know how to drive a forklift. I know how to drive a truck. I know how to band and build loads. I know how to do a takeoff. I know finances. I know P&Ls, balance sheets, cash flow statements. I know how to construct. If you ask me to go hang siding, to install a kitchen, to put on countertops, templated countertop, I know how to do all of it, and I can explain it to anyone. So not only from a business leadership standpoint, that, and somebody once told me I'm like a medieval king that missed the medieval times by 500 years. Because think about the first guy that was into battle back then. It was the king.
Yeah.
Right. He charged the hill first. And that's what I believe in. I believe in that same philosophy. Is I want people to work for me, but I also want them to know that, hey, if somebody's going to get dirty, I'm going to get dirty with you. So, and it came all the way back from my football coach telling me to let my shoulder pads do the talking instead of my jaw, which made a lot of sense to me. A little later, though, not immediately, right? When you're a dumbass at 18 years old and not quite understanding what he's trying to say to you, right? But
age 25 is approximately when the hippocampus
is that what they say?
Is when that actually finishes developing.
Does that make sense, though? I mean, did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Does that make
sense?
100%. Okay.
It made me think of one of my family core values is don't just talk about it, be about it. Meaning, like, you can't just talk about things; you got to actually take action, right? The story I like to share about it is Franklin, who was 4 at the time. We're hey, we got our shoes on, we got to go potty before we leave. He gets up, walks into the bathroom, comes back out, and says, "Don't just talk about it, be about it." And then he goes back in the bathroom to go to the potty. And I just think, I didn't imagine that was going to be where it got in his brain.
Yeah, but that's where it starts, though, right?
That's it.
I mean, that's where it starts, right? It's the little things that, so my dad was a Marine, and he raised me very tough. Like, he was very, very tough, but equally loving, right? I had a great childhood. But the guy was a 50-year smoker. And he'd sit there and be like, "You should never smoke, right? Never smoke." My sister, right? My sisters and my brother were all smokers, right? So I've never even smoked a cigarette, right? So I don't even know what it's like, because I was so involved in sports and I was so involved in fitness, and I knew that it just wasn't healthy, right? But my dad would sit there and smoke. "You should never smoke." Well, I have 3 siblings that are smokers, right? And I do believe people, especially when you talk about your father, as a leader. I mean, that's the guy in the family. He tells you not to do something, you don't do it, right? But when he's sitting there doing it, you're like, wait a minute, I don't quite understand this, right? So I think it's definitely a tremendous advantage if you can do by showing, right, and by leading. And people ask me all the time why my children are so well adjusted. And, they're adults, I have grandkids. I still have 1 kid at home. It's the leadership piece that we have instilled in them, and nothing is off limits either. Like, you want to talk about something? Let's talk about it. Put it on the table. You want to talk about drugs? You want to talk about sex? You want to whatever? Let's talk about it. And I think that if you take that approach with your kids, I think that you're going to get to a point where they're going to be like, I don't think there's anything else to talk about. Because then you go from like disciplinarian, father, mentor, coach, to now and my oldest son, we're friends. We're going to play golf together. There's nothing more I can do for him, right? Other than just be a supportive grandfather and a supportive dad, but we're friends now. 10 years ago, though, I was his father, right? And he was playing college sports, and I was consoling him on, how he should talk to his head coach when he wants this or that. And he's listening to me, right? So, I mean, I have a daughter that's in the military that is like fantastic in the military. And I would have told you, like, early days, she's going to be a great military person because she follows orders. Like, if I were to say, hey, go into the kitchen and do the dishes, I'd go in the kitchen and 30 minutes later, she's still filling with the dishes. But if I were to say, okay, go and turn the water on hot, open the dishwasher, put the plates in this way, it's done in 10 minutes. So I knew early that she's going to be a great military person because she knows how to execute orders. And she's killing it in the military, in the Air Force. So you got to be able to identify those things too, right? I mean, that's important to be able to identify those things.
Rick, I would love to talk to you on the podcast for hours on end. Unfortunately, we are not like Joe Rogan, that's
a good thing, actually.
Which means we need to ask you our last questions.
Okay.
I like this question because everyone on the show has always given a different answer. So if you were to go back 20 years, what advice would you give yourself? What would you tell yourself? 20-year-old younger self?
Well, I cheated a little bit, and I watched a couple of your guys' podcasts. So
that's not cheating. We encourage that behavior. Yeah. So that's not cheating.
So I listened, and I've been thinking about it, and there's a couple, but there's one that just stands out like glaring. So first thing I'd do is I'd take a ball bat with me. Like if you have a time machine, and I'd hit myself upside the head as hard as I could. Right. Right. So for this reason, because 20 years ago, I was probably pretty stubborn. I spent zero money on marketing. I didn't believe in marketing. I didn't value marketing. It meant nothing to me. So what I did was I was that guy. I was the guy knocking on doors. I was the guy basically doing just guerrilla marketing. What I would have done 20 years ago is I would have hired a marketing person. I would have created a marketing budget. I would have executed a marketing strategy. And there is no telling what my business would have been like 2 years ago when I sold it. Now, I don't regret it. It's not a regret. It's just something that I would do differently. Because we hired a marketing person, our first marketing person we hired 6 months ago. I have never seen this much growth, this many ideas from social media, from just marketing in general, PR. It has been absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. And it's a mistake that I made in business that I didn't do it.
Well,
good advice.
Also
the marketers in the world are happy to hear you give the shout.
I mean, it is. I mean, it is. It's right.
Well, best time to, was it?
Plant a tree.
Yeah. Best time to plant a tree. Right. Yeah.
Best time's 20 years ago. Second best time is right now.
Yeah.
All right. No worries. This has been a ton of fun. If somebody wanted to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah. So LinkedIn, Rick Heagarty on LinkedIn. It's Rick, R-I-C-K, Heagarty, Heagarty. I've got all the businesses, everything we've done. My email address is available. You can message me on LinkedIn. Be happy to talk to anybody. As a matter of fact, that's what I love to do. Right. I really appreciate this. And I've done a couple of podcasts now, and I would tell you that the questions you guys ask and the way that you handled it has been fantastic.
Well, thank
you.
Appreciate
that, Rick. That's awesome.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell the people before we say our goodbyes?
I think we said it. I think I probably, as my wife would say, I probably said too much.
All right. Well, then we'll listen to your wife. Listeners, I hope you had just as good of a time as me and Will did. And until next time, adios.
See you guys. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Building Scale. To help us reach even more people, please share this episode with a friend, a colleague, or on social media.
Remember, the 3 pillars of scaling a business are people, process, and technology.
And our mission is to help the AEC industry protect itself by making technology easy.
So if you think your company's technology pillar could use some improvement, book a call with us to see how we can help maximize your IT and cybersecurity strategy. Just go to buildingscale.net/help.
And until next time,
keep building scale.